Under the gray, overcast skies of Hinsdale, New York, in the 1970s, the Dandy family stepped into a small, secluded house at the end of a desolate dirt road. They dreamed of a peaceful life, where their children could run freely through nature, and Clara and Phil could heal the fractures left by city life. But that house, with its creaky doors and aging walls, seemed to have been waiting for them, not to welcome but to imprison. From the very first day, darkness cloaked the family. As Clara opened the front door, a chilling buzzing sound filled the air. Thousands of bees, like an army from hell, swarmed the ceiling, the walls, and crept into every crack of the wooden structure. No one could explain it. During previous visits, the house had been calm, untouched by a single insect. The exterminator arrived, horrified, and said he had never seen anything like it. They cleared the bees out, filled bags with their bodies, but it seemed the bees were only the first warning. Before they could recover, stranger things began to happen. The family's dog, as if possessed by an unseen force, began dragging in large, aged bones from the surrounding woods. Clara and Phil, assuming they were from animals, threw them out without much thought. But when night fell and the wind howled through the trees, it carried with it whispers, suggesting the bones held far darker secrets. Unknowingly, they may have disturbed spirits long at rest. One gloomy afternoon, Mike, the 14-year-old eldest son, went for a walk with two friends along the path near the forest. In the dim light, they saw a figure in the distance, a young farmer in old, tattered clothes walking slowly. Mike, curious and cautious, ran ahead to tell him the land was private. But as he approached, his blood froze. The man wasn't real. His body faded, becoming translucent like smoke, and as he passed behind a tree, he vanished into thin air. The boys ran home, shaken and breathless, stammering out the story to Clara. She laughed it off, chalking it up to childish imagination, but her smile couldn't hide the growing dread inside her. A few days later, 13-year-old Beth and her friend Patricia were playing outside when a sudden chill crawled down their spines. Looking up, they saw the same ghostly figure on a distant hill, his empty eyes fixed on them, his face emotionless as if he were judging, waiting. The girls screamed and fled into the house, their hearts pounding. This time, Clara couldn't ignore it. She began to realize the house they once saw as a sanctuary had become a trap, a hunting ground for spirits that never wanted them there. Phil, the skeptical father, remained calm, or at least pretended to. But one summer night in 1973, while driving to his night shift in Buffalo, his body began trembling. Cold sweat poured from him as if an invisible hand had clenched his heart. He called Clara, his voice shaking, asking if everything at home was okay. Clara, sitting in the dim kitchen with friends, reassured him everything was fine. But she didn't know that the moment she hung up, a dreadful sound would shatter the stillness. The birds in the cage on the porch suddenly screamed, flapping their wings wildly as if they had seen death itself. Beth ran to check, but there was nothing, just the silent night. Only a chilling presence behind her, breathing on the back of her neck. The Hinsdale house was no longer a refuge. It was a prison, a dwelling for restless souls now awakened. The Dandy family, whether they liked it or not, had become prey in a nightmare they couldn't escape. And what they faced was only the beginning. The darkness ahead ran deeper than they could ever imagine. Beneath the roof of the Hinsdale house, darkness no longer merely lurked. It invaded, seeping into every corner of the rooms, into every breath the Dandy family took. By 1973, the paranormal events had escalated beyond whispers or fleeting shadows. They became full-blown attacks, as if the spirits in the house had grown tired of playing games, and decided to reveal themselves in all their fury. Clara, once the calm and rational mother, began keeping a journal, desperately trying to make sense of the madness. On June 29, 1973, she was jolted awake by violent banging sounds echoing through the house, windows slamming shut despite the absence of wind. The following night, Beth, now 16, screamed in terror from her bedroom. She claimed that after getting a drink of water, a dark, invisible force lunged at her, trying to suffocate her face. When she struggled and threw it to the floor, there was no sound, as if it belonged to a world beyond the physical. That night, Beth refused to sleep alone, curling up in her parents' bed, her eyes wide with fear. Only 2 days later, Mike, the eldest son, experienced a waking nightmare. In the darkness of his room, he heard a voice calling, "Mom." But it wasn't his own. When Clara rushed in, she found his belongings, board games, magazines, everything, scattered across the floor as if an invisible storm had torn through. Mike, still lying in bed, whispered, "I didn't get up until you walked in." He said he watched everything slide off the shelves, as if unseen hands were yanking them down before his eyes. The next morning, Beth noticed a strange burn mark shaped like a water droplet on her leg. When she showed the family, Mike turned pale. He lifted his shirt to reveal an identical burn mark he had hidden since the week before. These burns, like the mark of something demonic, began to spread to other family members and even objects around the house, as if the house itself was claiming its territory. But what truly shook the family to their core were the chants, otherworldly, guttural, echoing from the forest behind the house. One spring evening in 1971, Clara, out walking the dog Lassie, heard something resembling a Gregorian chant, dark, ominous, and echoing through the trees. The next night, she brought Beth, Mary, and Beth's friend Patricia into the woods to investigate. As they climbed a hill, the chanting grew clearer, like a choir from hell. Then, suddenly, silence. A deathly stillness took its place. And then, a deep male voice began murmuring unintelligible prayers, as if summoning something from the shadows. Lassie growled, her hair standing on end, and the group fled in terror, their hearts pounding like war drums. The spirits grew bolder. One July day, Mary and her friend Susan were swimming in the pond on the property when they spotted a strange woman dancing on the opposite bank. She had curly red hair, bulging eyes like someone who had been hanged, buck teeth, and wore what looked like tattered curtain fabric for a dress. The girls stared, horrified, as the woman glided into the tall grass and vanished. That night, Mary couldn't sleep in her room. She heard furniture moving, the bed creaking as if someone was sitting on it, and felt a crushing pressure in her ears, like the air itself was being sucked out of the room. At the same time, Laura, the 12-year-old daughter, began exhibiting unsettling behavior. She told friends she had seen everything and would die young, with a chilling calm. Her prophecy, dismissed at the time, would haunt the family years later when Laura passed away at 31, just as she had foretold. Father Alonsus, or Father Al, was called in to bless the house. He declared the phenomena the work of a poltergeist, a furious, chaotic spirit. But his ritual only made things worse. The footsteps, the knocking, the terrifying noises intensified, especially in Mary's room. One August night in 1973, Phil, once a skeptic, called from work, his voice shaking with dread. Moments later, the caged birds shrieked and thrashed wildly again, and Beth screamed from her bedroom, pointing at the window and yelling, "It's there! Don't look!" She described a woman with pale, ghostly skin, wet black hair, hollow eyes, and a beckoning hand. The most terrifying part was that Beth couldn't tell if the woman was inside or outside the window. From that night on, Beth never entered her room without locking the window and drawing the curtains. But darkness wasn't deterred. A foul stench, like rotting flesh, filled the shared space between Beth and Laura's rooms. Footsteps and dragging sounds echoed from the attic. On the night of September 3rd, Labor Day, ghostly apparitions manifested throughout the house. In the yard, in Mary's room, and in Beth's, witnessed by multiple people. Beth screamed when she saw a figure on her bed matching the exact description Clara had seen days earlier through the window. When Phil checked the attic, he discovered the chimney pipe had been dismantled and neatly stacked against the wall. No one heard a sound. The Hinsdale house had become a battlefield. The Dandy family was under siege, surrounded by relentless spirits that refused to let go. Each passing day dragged them deeper into the nightmare, unsure whether they would escape or become the next victims of the growling darkness that loomed all around them. The Hinsdale house, with its walls soaked in fear and rooms echoing with cries for help, had become a living tomb for the Dandy family. By 1974, the nightmare was no longer fleeting visits from spirits. It had become a life and death struggle, where each passing day dragged them closer to collapse. Under the suffocating atmosphere, the family faced a bitter truth. They could no longer live in a house that was devouring their souls. The paranormal activity didn't wane, despite their desperate attempts to drive it away. After Father Al's visit, the knocks, footsteps, and bone-chilling cold continued, as if the spirits were mocking the family's helplessness. One afternoon in September 1973, known as the day hell broke loose, the horror reached its peak. Apparitions appeared simultaneously inside the house and out in the yard, forcing the terrified family to flee outside, only to see the spirits reappear in Mary and Beth's rooms. Clara, looking through a window, saw the figure Beth had described, a woman with pitch-black eyes and a beckoning hand, as if trying to pull her into eternal darkness. A flicker of hope emerged when the family was invited to a lecture by psychic Alex Tanis at St. Bonaventure University. Arranged by Father Al, Alex visited the house afterward, and what he witnessed chilled everyone to the bone. Pale-faced and breathing heavily, Alex described seeing 7 brutally murdered spirits on the property. A hanged woman, a stabbed man, a young girl tortured to death, and more, all somehow connected to an old carriage road nearby. He claimed their bodies had once been hidden in the attic before being discarded, and that their pain had seeped into every brick of the house. During the exorcism conducted by Alex and Father Al, horrifying screams echoed through the home, as if the house itself was writhing in agony. The paranormal activity temporarily subsided, but the peace was just an illusion. The dandies' lives continued to unravel. In October 1973, Mike was in a serious car accident that left him hospitalized for weeks with a damaged spleen. Beth began to hear voices outside her window, clearer than before, of a man and a woman calling her name in eerie conversations, interspersed with the sound of metal striking an oil drum. In April 1974, a film crew from New York University arrived with Alex to document the house. During filming, terrifying phenomena persisted. Light bulbs shattered on their own, Alex suffered burns on his back while attempting to cleanse Mary's room, and more screams rang out during the final exorcism, like spirits violently resisting expulsion from their domain. Despite brief moments of quiet, the darkness always returned. One night in July 1974, Phil entered the master bedroom and froze, watching a book float in midair before slowly descending, as if guided by an invisible hand. Laura, the youngest daughter, began seeing apparitions more frequently, her mood turning somber, as if something had possessed her. By August, both Beth and Mike had left the house. Beth married and moved to California, while Mike joined the Navy. The family was now reduced to Clara, Phil, Laura, and Mary, but financial pressure was mounting. Phil's job in Buffalo, along with the cost of maintaining the house, had plunged them into deep debt. An attempt to sell the house failed after a couple from Buffalo fled upon seeing a female apparition near the birdbath in the yard. On October 11, 1974, the Dandy family filed for bankruptcy. 2 days later, with only Clara and Phil left in the now empty home, a terrifying cacophony rose from the basement, gongs, crying children, sirens, and bells, like a farewell symphony from hell. On October 17th, they left the Hinsdale House for good. Though terrified, Clara felt a strange sense of betrayal, not out of affection but from a bizarre bond formed with the spirits, warped and twisted. The family moved to the West Coast, leaving behind a house filled with secrets that were never truly uncovered. Years later, the team from Hometown Ghost Stories stepped into the Hinsdale House, which still stood in eerie silence amid rural New York's isolation. From the moment they entered, they felt an oppressive atmosphere, as if the very air was pressing on their lungs. During their investigation, they recorded disturbing phenomena: a distant scream from the woods unlike any animal or human, a mysterious orange light floating among the trees with no identifiable source, and chilling responses through a spirit box, repeating team members' names and the word doll, coinciding with live viewers reporting that dolls in the room's corners were moving. The basement, with its ancient stone walls and strangely small footprint compared to the rest of the house, triggered motion sensors constantly, as if something was replying to the investigators' questions. Mary's room, stifling and tense, radiated anger, its temperature fluctuating wildly while a strange blue shape spread across the sensor screen, as if a spirit was closing in with every fearful reaction. The Hinsdale House is not just a haunted location. It is a living entity soaked in the pain and rage of the trapped souls within. The investigation team left with heavy hearts, haunted by what they had witnessed, but also compelled to return and confront the darkness again. They encouraged the curious to read Echoes of a Haunting Revisited, Clara's book, to better understand the harrowing tale that tore a family apart and left behind a chilling legacy. The house still stands, silent, yet menacing, awaiting the next soul brave enough to cross its threshold.